Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to Business is Boring. We're joined today by a guest who's been on to talk about Eat My Lunch and the start of AF Drinks. And we're catching up today with Lisa King to talk about the advances the company's been making, where it's now available in 4,000 stores across the States, across New Zealand, and has a major new market about to launch later this year. The brand's been going great guns, extending its ranging at Walmart and Target, and having a high-profile campaign with Kardashians earlier this year for Dry January. To chat the journey, what's next, and where it's going, Lisa King joins us now. Tēnā, thank you for being here.
Hi, Simon.
Hey, thank you so much for coming back in to chat, and it would be so cool to catch up on kind of how things are going. Because last time we caught up, you'd established AF Drinks and were getting it going into the States. And that's such a big mission to do. How are things going now?
It has been a crazy, wild journey over the last 2 years since we launched in the US. I think, when we spoke, we had just got ranging into a smaller retailer called Sprouts with 400 stores. And so we launched with them 2 years ago. And they were the first retailer in the US that actually got into the alcohol-free space. And we were one of the first brands to launch with Sprouts. And then since then, we've seen a huge explosion of that category throughout the US. 2 years later, we're now in 4,000 stores, as you've mentioned. And just the rapid change of consumer behavior around drinking and the drinking culture.
It's so amazing. Like being one of the first in this category in the States and then being part of that huge wave. Tell us about what the kind of landscape is like. As we keep hearing, Gen Zs are drinking less and people are changing their drinking habits. How does that kind of turn up in the States?
Yeah, well, it really has been quite a rapid change. And it's similar to what we've seen in New Zealand. I know when we first launched in New Zealand 4.5 years ago, people were like, why? Why would you have a gin and tonic without alcohol in it? Like, that just doesn't make sense. And now, you're seeing a great range of products available in stores, when you go out to bars and restaurants, and it's just not a big deal anymore. And I think in the US, what we've seen is an even faster rate of change towards drinking. People now will go to a bar and order 0% beer, and it's not a big deal. And they're readily available. And there's more and more choices when it comes to really great adult, sophisticated, non-alcoholic options versus just your traditional juice or Coke or water. There's definitely a shift in behavior, and what we're seeing is that younger generation, they are coming through. They're more conscious around their health, that they're not willing to give up, their Saturday mornings or the whole weekend by being hungover and lying in bed. They still want to get out and do the yoga, do their hikes and hang out with friends. They also can't afford alcohol. It's become really expensive. And we're seeing that across multiple markets. And then you've also got that slightly older, well, kind of my age, in their kind of 30s, 40s, who are really, for whatever reasons, generally health or medical, realizing that alcohol doesn't serve a great purpose in their life. And so they're cutting back.
Yeah.
But it's not a total move to sobriety. Most people who buy our products, like over 90%, still drink alcohol. It's just more a sense of moderation and reduction.
Yeah, those movements that you were so early to be part of and help lead, and your approach of making it kind of, cool not to drink, instead of having to apologize. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not drinking tonight. Being like, I'm not drinking, and what a great choice, has been such a powerful thing inside all of that. But yeah, like those ideas, like so many more people becoming aware that, it's a massive carcinogen and a neurotoxin and linked to all these kind of bad things. And the more days without alcohol that you have in a week, the better for you. And those stories seem to be becoming more and more kind of prevalent.
Yeah, that was definitely our strategy from the beginning, is that, we didn't want to be that judgmental brand telling people, oh, you shouldn't drink, it's bad for you. What we wanted to do was provide them a really aspirational alternative or a choice when they didn't want to drink. And by making it really fun and cool and sexy and it looks amazing, that you want to hold it and show people what you're drinking. And so that was absolutely the plan and our kind of positioning with the brand from the start.
I love the line, the drink you drink when you're not drinking. I think that's just so good, like it really leans into the kind of weirdness about it, that it's a drink but not drinking, and really positions it so well. Tell us about the scale of the opportunity, right? Like, because when you say you launched into 400 stores, like that's bigger than launching into, a grocery chain in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And then what does it take to win a customer like a Walmart or a Target, and these things are on a scale that, we can't even kind of comprehend in this market, right? And then how do you grow into those massive operations?
Yeah, when we first went to the States, our plan was, let's do 50 stores as a trial. And the first day we were making products over there, we got the call from Sprout saying, actually, we want this to go nationwide to 400. So that was a huge step up from day one. And I think scale is something it's so hard for us to get our heads around. There's over 40,000 supermarkets in the US, and there's chains that we've never even heard of that have, there's an amazing store called Publix. It's got 1,200 stores just in Florida. Yeah, and so that's more than all the supermarkets in New Zealand combined in that one state and one retailer.
Yeah.
So the opportunities are endless. And it's been really fun and learning about all of these different retailers, and they've all got their strengths and different footholds in different regions. And then, with Target and Walmart, I think, we've had this great opportunity to be one of the first in a new category. There's not many brands that get that opportunity, and definitely not many New Zealand brands in a market like the US to really be at the front of that. And we've been able to take our experience from New Zealand and bring it to the retailers in the US. I think that's been a huge advantage for us, is that we did have those couple of years to prove it out. We learned a lot about the category, how to educate consumers, where to put it in the retail space. We're still having conversations with retailers in the US about, does this sit in alcohol or does it sit with the mixers and the soft drinks? Do you have to ID people for this type of product? So we kind of already had the advantage of a couple of years' experience. And so a lot of the retailers kind of come to us as kind of like that category leader and going, hey, what are best practices? And we're able to share with them a lot of data and information around that. With retailers like Target and Walmart, again, scale, like there's over 4,000 Walmart stores throughout the US. They think there's about 2,400 Target stores. So again, just when you think about these numbers, it's kind of mind-blowing. And it's such a new category for them. They have to take a risk and make space and take something else out of the supermarket shelves to put this category in. So when retailers like that make that move, it's not just a trend anymore. They're really seeing all the data that they've got access to, that this is what consumers are wanting and what their shoppers are asking for.
Yeah, and it's such a kind of physical manifestation of a new category, right? Like in software, you're making a new category, it's kind of quite abstract. But here, some stuff comes off a shelf, new shelves go in, a new sign goes up that says non-alc cocktail in a can, and then your product's one of the very first things being put on those shelves. And that's so cool. And like, how do you, when you talk about that thing and kind of the education and building awareness piece, like that's a big job for a small brand in a big market, right? Tell us about like some of the big swings you've done. Like there's some really cool stuff you've done around Coachella and, associating it with cool festival feelings of freedom, etc. And then also the big campaign with the
Yeah.
Kardashians. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the States is such a huge market. We're in 43 states. So to build awareness and, engagement, like there's such a big job to do. First, our product itself is, the proof point, because in this category, one of our biggest challenges has been that everyone's had a bad tasting non-alc beverage at some point. And so it was one of the challenges that we had to come over. And when people taste AF, even the buyers for Target, Walmart, and all these retailers, like they're always just so blown away by the taste of it. And, we get consistent feedback that this is the best tasting non-alc drink that we've had. The second is the packaging and the brand. On shelf is where people see it and find us the most. And everyone loves not just the brand name because it's fun and cheeky, but the aesthetic and the look of our beautiful drinks. And it's funny because, Americans do have quite a different aesthetic. And there's a lot of brands on the shelf that look like they've been made in PowerPoint. So, we've had the advantage of having an incredible designer and creative team to kind of bring that all together. And then, of course, the communications piece. And we, as I said, the strategy from beginning was to kind of make this brand really cool and aspirational, and for people to see that actually, hey, I can have as much fun and do as well and don't need alcohol in our lives. And we wanted to use stories of well-known people to portray that. And so right from the beginning, I remember when we were sitting in Zoom meetings during lockdown about, how are we going to make this brand aspirational, create a world that people want to be a part of. And James and our team, he found all these celebs that didn't drink. And it was like, oh my God, Pharrell doesn't drink, and Bradley Cooper and Naomi Campbell. And it's like, how is it that Pharrell can be the life of the party without alcohol?
Oh, and look, like no one ever believes his age, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so when you start digging into their stories, you're like, oh, that's so cool. And so we really wanted, a big part of the brand and the business was to share those stories. And, we started a podcast called Drunk AF, sharing stories of cool Kiwis that, have a different relationship with alcohol. And so going into the US, they're also very celebrity obsessed. They love their influencers. And so we've been working quite a while, looking at different celebrities and people that genuinely have a story around how their relationship with alcohol has changed. And we came close to a couple of massive names. And they're just kind of at the end of last year, our agency that we work with, who also happens to be Kiwis, Stephen said, oh, well, Khloé hasn't been drinking. She's been going on this huge health binge. She had just turned 40. And so she had kind of pretty much stopped drinking. And he goes, but the funny thing is, Kris, their mum, all the kids kind of like joke about how much she drinks. And it's a thing that 5 o'clock comes around, she's got a drink in her hand. And because AF tastes so good and we wanted to get across the fact that it pretty much tastes like, an alcoholic cocktail just without the alcohol, we're like, wouldn't it be funny if Khloé, invited her mum over for drinks and served her AF without telling her that there was no alcohol in it? And so that's kind of how it all came about. And Stephen, who we work with, reached out to them directly. They loved the idea.
Well, it's great. It feels like a storyline in the Kardashians, right? Yeah. It really does. It's like, it's so natural in what we know of those characters.
Yeah. And they loved it. And 2 weeks later, we're filming it in their studio. And, I think it really played, as you say, played up to their personalities. And Kris really brought that to life. She was like the star of it. In the little campaign that we did. And so, that's how it came about.
And what kind of thing? Because, like you say, in 43 states, small brand, very hard to get enough budget to become as well known as a Coca-Cola or something, right? Like it's kind of bananas to even think about that. But that kind of big play to get someone who's so well known and get that awareness. What is that? Are you looking for kind of like short-term sales, or is it, every buyer at a big grocery store that you're having a conversation with now thinks of you in a different way? Or is it a mixture of both short-term sales and trying to kind of show that you're at that big level?
Yeah, I think it, hits lots of different objectives. And short term, that week, our online sales were ridiculous. It drove so much traffic to our website. And it really kind of did put our brand onto the stage of like, hey, we're actually serious and we're here to play. And then with, PR, but buyers, investors, everyone saw it. And so it gives you that different level of credibility. And, with buyers, it shows that, we're going to invest in this category and we're going to, help bring consumers into it, into their stores. They love that too. So, definitely short and long term, I think it has huge benefits for the brand.
Yeah, that's so cool. And there's some really exciting news. Let's come back in a moment and chat to a really big new market that you're going to launch into, and also what that role is of the marketing and the special model around a product like this. In some really cool new news, you've got another major market coming online. Tell us about the UK.
So at the end of last year, Pernod Ricard's investment arm invested in AF a couple of years ago. So they're one of our major shareholders. And their European team reached out to us and said, hey, actually, the largest retailer in the UK reached out to us and asked for an introduction to AF. So I flew over to London to meet this retailer. And what was really interesting is that the UK is the biggest market for non-alc products. And we hadn't even really looked at it because we just thought, we're going to be so late. It's quite developed. There's a lot of brands already. All the retailers are into it. It'd be really hard to kind of make a dent in that market. So they have tons of non-alc beers, tons of non-alc kind of big bottle spirits. So, they've just launched non-alc Captain Morgan. They've got non-alc Bombay, Tanqueray. All the big kind of alcohol spirits brands you can think of, there's a non-alc version. Surprisingly, they don't have non-alc RTDs.
Weird.
So weird.
When I think about that UK drinking market, I think about like a hen's party on a train up to Edinburgh, drinking like 15 Marks and Spencer's G&Ts. Like they are heavy on the G&T cans, right? Like they're the world leaders in G&T can consumption.
Absolutely. So we were surprised, or pleasantly surprised to get that call. And what the retailer was discovering was that, a lot of their consumers who are that slightly younger, they don't want to spend £20 on a big bowl of non-alc Bombay and then go home, well, I don't really like that, and I still have to buy the mixes and everything to go with it. Also, they realise the brands are brands that are quite old. It's what their parents are drinking, and, no one really wants to be seen with the brand that your parents have. And they didn't really have a modern proposition for this consumer. And we are seeing, this move into, beverage is all about convenience. And so he's ready to drink single-serve formats. And so, we started having conversations with them and we got ranging, and we're about to launch in the UK in October this year.
Wow. And what kind of scale is that to be launching in the UK?
Well, this retailer that we're talking to, they're the largest retailer in the UK. But again, the opportunities are massive. In the UK now, a third of pub visits are non-alc. people are going there and not drinking alcohol. So again, that change, particularly in a market like the UK, where drinking, going to the pub is just part of what you do.
It's your living room, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But people are going there and going, actually, I still want to go to the pub. I still want to socialize. I still want to go drinking with my friends. Just don't want the alcohol. And so, they've just seen that huge growth of that non-alc market. But again, when it comes to like cocktails and RTDs, there just hasn't been any really great options. And so AF has an opportunity for the third time to be one of the first, which is super exciting in a new market for us.
That's so cool. And launching with such, the largest retailer is such a platform for future growth and, is an extraordinary start. And that grocery channel, right, that's the place where it makes incredible sense to have AF, right? Because it's part of your weekly shop. I'll get these at home, and then, if it's Thursday and I feel like a drink, but I should never drink, I'll have one of those. Like that's kind of the mindset of picking them up in the supermarket, right? Tell us about what it takes to support a launch like that from New Zealand. Like, how do you do that?
Well, we've been managing the US from New Zealand for the last 2 years. We've had a part-time general manager in the US, and then the rest of the team has been operating from here. That's about to change. I'm about to move to the US as we launch into the UK as well, just managing those time zones, being so far away from the market. We've realized we just actually need feet on the ground and people, who understand the market really well. And with the UK, we've partnered up with a great distributor. So they'll be out there selling AF. But in terms of support and marketing, we'll probably look at having our own resources there too.
And the other side of it, the place that I work the most in is software. And if you get a really big new account in software, it's generally pretty trivial to expand, but then inventory-based goods, like getting a, many hundred store deal that wasn't perhaps, it's good news because it wasn't perhaps on the plan, but then it's like, how do we fund and organise that with inventory and logistics and merchandising and support and the like? And how have you navigated that, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think, growth in this kind of consumer goods space, it costs a lot of money. So every time we got a new account, like when we got Target, we first got Target about a year and a half ago, it was 600 stores. And then a month later, we got Walmart, and that was another 600 stores. And when we went to go, hang on, how much do we have to make? We had to raise some more money because we hadn't planned. Again, you don't see these opportunities come up, and you're always out there trying to get the business, but quite often they plan a long way out. So, we're having meetings right now with these retailers for next March, April. So you have a little bit of time, but with Target and Walmart, it came very fast.
And you just got to jump on that opportunity.
And you have to.
We want you to be the first person to be doing this with us. You're like, okay, we've got to find a way.
And that's a good problem to have, when you're going back to your shareholders and going, hey guys, actually we need more money to fund these huge retailers and to supply them with product. It is a good problem, but it's still a problem, and it is challenging raising that kind of money. And the cash cycle as well with consumer goods can take quite long, especially in the US, from when we're making to when we actually get the money. It can be anywhere between 4 to 6 months.
Yeah, those big corporates have longer payment terms in the States than we used to in a small market like this, right?
Yeah. So, it's definitely a stretch. And but again, I think when you're showing that level of growth and those opportunities and you're opening doors or going into a new market, people want to be part of that with you. And so, it does feel like we've been in constant fundraising mode for 2 years because the business has just gone through such amazing growth. And at every kind of stage, we're needing more and more to fund production, marketing support for a new market. You're always over-investing at that early stage, particularly somewhere like the UK. We want to get our name out there. We want to make AF famous with the English and get people going into stores and buying our products.
And that first launch is so important, right? Like there's that line that the product, the packaging sells the product, but then the product sells the product. And, if you can land and get in people's minds and get them to try it, then the partners will be more likely to support it and keep it, and then you become kind of part of their normal repertoire of things they buy. But it really is like it's a big push. It's no guarantee even landing, and you've got to support it so hard to get it to work.
Yeah, there's this saying of it's easy to get product on shelf. The hard part's to getting it off the shelf.
Yeah, what a great track record you have of proving that in these markets, right?
Yeah, and it's been, a great success story because, with Target and Walmart, we're in 600 stores when we first launched. And now we're in 1,200 stores of each retailer. Yeah, so again, it just goes to prove our success and what they've seen AF's able to do for the category and for their stores. And then, that proven success has helped us with the likes of retailers in the UK, but also further retailers in the US. As more and more are seeing the growth of this category, all the retailers are now going, actually, we really need to seriously give it space and give it some thought. And AF's one of the first brands that they reach out to. And recently we just won ranging with the largest grocery chain in the US as well. So we'll be launching in about 500 stores with them in the coming months, which is really exciting. So yeah, the opportunities huge.
I mean, that's wild, right? Like 500 stores. That's that's like as big as another entire market, right?
Yeah, that's a test.
That's just a test.
Yeah.
Whoa. And where do you think we are in the cycle, right? Like, it's definitely here to stay. Like, this is a new change in drinking habits. But are we still quite early, as if you've still got major retailers not really having dedicated space, and you've still got major markets not even having space yet, with the UK making that new ranging. Where are we in the cycle of this?
Yeah, I think consumers have been looking and wanting these products for a long time. And we saw that when we launched in the US on Amazon. Our Amazon sales were ridiculous. We don't have Amazon here, so we kind of really had nothing to go on. So we did our forecast for first year on Amazon, and I think we did 3 times more than what we thought we were going to do. And it just showed that consumers were wanting these types of products. It's just retailers weren't offering it. So I think the retailer's a little bit behind what consumers' needs are. But yeah, we're definitely seeing that huge shift, and it's becoming more mainstream. So you definitely have your early adopters, but we are seeing that now I think it's going to become mainstream very quickly in the next kind of 12 to 24 months across the US. And the retailers are already starting to realize they're a little bit behind the game. It's the same in the UK with the non-alc cocktails especially.
Yeah. How's the journey been for you as, dropped in there, moving to the States? I mean, that's a huge kind of change and a huge push to go for. And, from where you started this brand, which was to solve a problem that you had.
Yeah.
You wanted to change your relationship with drinking, and then turned up and people were giving you horrible warm orange juices. And well, this is bananas. From that kind of insight to, doing things with the Kardashians, being the launch partner for the biggest retailer in the UK. What an extraordinary journey.
It's been so much fun. And the learning curve's been huge. I've really enjoyed learning about the US market. They have such a different way of doing things, some better and some worse. I think it's just been a really fun brand to get involved with and a fun business to run. It's definitely challenging. But at the end of the day, the founding team, all of us that kind of jumped into this opportunity, we had a bigger purpose of, I think anyone can make a drink. We wanted to really change behavior around drinking, and to see that happening has been, really, I think, quite fulfilling, and it kind of keeps us going. And also, there's just, as I said before, there's not many opportunities as a New Zealand brand to be at the forefront of a category, and that's been really exciting.
Yeah, maybe one thing to touch on as well is like just the executional and operational excellence required, right? So scaling like that, and I've been really lucky to have a bit of a view to what you've been building, thanks to James Herman from previously where I work, being part of that kind of founding team around the creative and the brand. And also as Brand Fund are a investor and supporter of AF Drinks. And one thing I'd note is that lots of people give rosy forecasts of what they think they're going to do in the next year. And I think you're the only people who have consistently over delivered on every forecast at every stage through all of these things. And that's, of course, the kind of thing that happens if you do win 600 stores out of the blue, right? But, it's a phenomenal achievement. What does it take in terms of, setting up operations so you've got the third-party suppliers ready to actually be able to help scale? And how do you do those things to be able to handle the actual physical logistics of doing it all? It's a lot of cans to be sending around the place, right?
Yeah, well, from the outset, we've been clear that we wanted to be a global business. And so we structured the business to be able to scale quickly. And so, we don't ship products from New Zealand. We set up manufacturing in each of the local markets. That's got its own challenges. Finding good partners, particularly in the US, has probably been one of our biggest challenges. We're on to our third contract manufacturer in the US. So you are relying a lot on those third parties to deliver, and that can be quite stressful. But we run, generally a really small team. There's still only 12 of us.
Wow.
That's running, these two markets and soon to be a third. But we kind of have two ways of working at AF. And we say, so we work fast AF and we're also anal AF. So,
that's a real tension, right?
Yeah, those two things don't normally work together. But I think, for me, one of my personal things is like it's actions, not words. And, so everything is about what we do. We don't sit around chatting a lot, and it's going out there, learning really fast, making those mistakes, but correcting them even faster. And that's a huge advantage we have over any of these big companies that are looking at this. And every big alcohol company, we've had a conversation with them, they're all looking at this space. Even the big soft drink companies, they're all seeing what's happening. It's the fastest growing category in beverage in the US at the moment. So everyone's looking at it. And for us right now, our advantage is that we can move incredibly fast, but do it at a level that most startups can't. And that's having an incredible team. That creative team, the founding team, I think we added up, we have like over 125 years of brand experience between us. And just finding really good people to help us execute. But being able to make decisions really quickly, move on it, learn, reiterate, go again. And I think, that's kind of been a huge part of why we've got to where we've got to today.
Yeah, and with that scale and opportunity, like where do you see this going next? Because I think, part of New Zealand, like we don't have a big tradition of, globally leading FMCG brands coming from here, right? Like that's just not really something that kind of happens normally. And then the scale, is actually kind of hard to kind of imagine if you're used to working in a context like this. And how have you been able to upscale kind of ambition and what you're delivering as you go?
I think, when you're on the ride, it's hard. Like, I'm always just focused on moving ahead. And so, there are lots of times where I just need to stop myself and take it in and go, oh my God, we are in 4,000 stores, and that number, again, I find it really hard to get my head around. But yeah, I just love the fact that we are from New Zealand, and you try and take some of those great Kiwi attributes to each of these markets. When I meet with the buyers and I meet with all of them in person, a lot of people have said to me, oh, you've got to be more, you got to be louder and more confident and sell yourself like Americans do. And I'm just not like that anyway. And I find it very difficult. And I think, just being very authentic, bringing a bit of that Kiwi humbleness to it is quite refreshing for a lot of these buyers. And, every kind of in-person buyer meeting that I've been in, we've never had a no. And they just love the story, the authenticity, and kind of where we come from as a business. So I think, really kind of leaning into some of the things about us that make us Kiwi, but then also being able to have that ambition of going, wow, as we're learning about all the opportunities, we're like, yeah, we wanted that. We're going to go after this and that and so forth. Globally, we went to the States first. Now we've got this opportunity in the UK. They're the biggest markets for this category, but we're seeing huge growth in other markets coming through in the likes of, the Middle East, where obviously that makes sense. There's Asia, where it's definitely starting to see a lot of that drinking culture change as well. We were in Korea a year ago, and a lot of the bars and restaurants, about 25% of the people that come in here don't want to drink, which is really surprising. So I think, just in the next few years, we're going to start seeing some of those markets come to life a bit with this category as well. So yeah, the opportunities are absolutely endless. I think, not drinking or non-alcoholic options like ours are going to be as big as alcohol. And that's that's our ambition, is that I always wanted, if when you walked into a supermarket, for there to be as many non-alc options as there are alcohol. Same on a bar menu. Right now it's a little bit hit and miss. You can go to a bar or a restaurant and there's maybe a couple of non-alc beers and then some Coke and orange juice. I want there to be beautifully curated cocktails like ours that are available on every bar menu alongside the alcoholic ones.
That's awesome. As a final thought, what will success be for you now, and how has that kind of changed over time?
I don't think it's ever really changed for us. As a group, again, we're always wanting to do something that makes the world a little bit better. I don't think any of us would have invested all this time and effort if all we were doing was selling a drink. And as we're starting to see that behavior and that culture change, that's kind of what we wanted this business to do. And I think we're getting there. Obviously, it's really exciting to see the growth of this business. To be able to, I love walking into a supermarket or a store and seeing our product on shelf. That's incredibly satisfying. And as you say, there's been not many examples you can point to of New Zealand brands that have made it on a global scale in this space. And I'd love for AF to be that one.
Yeah, it's so magic. Well, it's so cool to see all the things, the platform that you've built for future growth. And it really feels to me like we're pretty early in the cycle of this being a normal thing that you chuck in your supermarket trolley with every shop, and that's where this is heading. And it's early days, and I just can't wait to see where you take it next.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks so much for sharing the story. Thanks so much to Lisa King of AF Drinks. Thank you so much for having us along in your ears and listening. And thank you to everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Te Aihe Butler. If you do like what we do, please do rate and leave a review. It really does help. E nohora.